D&D hot takes. I asked all of you to give me your spiciest, weirdest, or funniest takes on the game that we all know and love, and so I'm going to go through some of them and give my thoughts. Thank you so much to everybody who wrote in. I literally could not make this video without you, so I hope you enjoy, and without further ado, let's get started. So I actually have two that I want to tackle at the same time because they're kind of related to the same concept. The first one says, AI is the future of D&D, like it or not. Any commercial company that does not embrace change is doomed to fail. This does not mean you have to use it at your table, but AI is not going anywhere and will shape the future of the average player's D&D experience going forward. And then the second one, I don't know if it's a hot take, but from my experience, it seems like it is. AI goes against what I consider D&D and TTRPGs in general to be. It's a celebration of creativity and a love letter to art. AI currently feels like it's not only commercializing, but also replacing real art, and many image generation models are trained by real hardworking artists who did not even consent to this. Looking at those two comments, I partially agree with the first and totally agree with the second. I think it's naive to think that AI, as it gets bigger and bigger and more people start using it, isn't going to factor into the future of D&D. More and more of the commercialized side of the game, the products you buy, the VTTs that you use, whatever it is, are going to incorporate AI into it. I think it would be foolish to think that it's not. But on a personal level, when these tools started coming out, I really liked them. The image generator, the song generators, those are aspects of myself that I always wanted to be able to do, like art and music, but I can't. I don't have the talent or the time or the dedication to put toward actually getting good at those things. So I was like, oh, look at these tools that I can use to make dumb little pictures and dumb little songs, and it's great. And then the more I learned about AI and how much energy those processing centers need and how it's kind of a disaster for the environment, how a lot of the artists that it's trained on, like the second comment mentioned, aren't being compensated at all for their work basically being stolen, and how these AI tools are really starting to actually replace real people with actual jobs, the more I've soured on it all. Here is what gives me hope for the future of D&D. If people in the video game industry decide they're going to start using AI in their products, there's not much you can do about it. Most people can't take years to learn how to code and make their own games. If people in the movie industry decide all the CGI and some of the actors are going to be AI generated now, again, you can make your own movies, but if I want to go watch the Avengers, I can't do that on my own. D&D is very different. Sure, they might come out with AI dungeon masters, AI generated modules, VTTs that run on it, but you don't have to use them. Like the first comment mentioned, you don't need it at your table. If you want to have a person as the DM instead of a robot, there are lots of dungeon masters out there. If you don't want to use those AI modules, you can use an old one that was written by a human, or just make your own. TTRPGs are unique because as part of that hobby, you're not just consuming something, you're creating it as part of doing it. And so I don't think AI DMs are going to totally replace people, or that AI is going to get rid of all of the really fun parts of the hobby that we know and love, because our community is sort of specially positioned to be able to ignore it. So yes, more and more of the commercial side of things probably is going to involve AI, but if that's not something you want to do or use, honestly, I'm not that worried about it replacing me anytime soon. So yes, AI is going to play a role in D&D's future, but I don't think the average player's experience needs to change that much, and I honestly don't think it will unless the community as a whole decides that's the direction they want to go in, and personally I hope not, but I guess the future will tell. Hello, Future Tyler here. You can tell because I look older and wiser. And I wanted to jump in and just clarify that that first commenter actually left a follow-up where they specified a little more what they were talking about. And so when it comes to home games, they were mostly saying that things like AI music, AI character art, AI battle maps, those are the things that are going to affect most people's sessions, more so than like AI DMs or AI generated modules. And I actually do agree with that. Like I said, I've used these tools in the past, I've had players use them, so I've seen stuff like that at my table, and I think as more and more people discover these tools, and as more of the stuff that you find online was made by them, inevitably it is going to start to trickle into home games more and more. But everything I said about this hobby being resistant to it, and that it truly does just come down to your choice in the end, which this commenter also said is still true. So if you don't want AI at your table, you can still just play D&D or whatever TTRPG you want and completely ignore it. But I did just want to make sure that I was fully representing their opinion as well as my own. Alright, back to Past Me. Hot take, fudging dice doesn't matter if the players don't know. Also, changing HP or other circumstances doesn't matter as long as they don't find out. Partially agree, partially disagree. I have absolutely changed up the HP of my monsters on the fly, and maybe I fudged 1 or 2 dice rolls in my time, maybe 3, and I think it is a tool in your toolbox to use. Matt Colville has a really great video about how when you bring something to the table, it is impossible for you to know how it's going to interact with all of your players' abilities, how the dice are rolling that day, all of these different factors. And so fudging is just one more thing you can do to help balance things at the table. And I generally agree with that. I think the problem becomes when dungeon masters start to fudge a little too much. I've seen stories of people who, instead of having HP for their monsters, just kind of decide when they die, when they think the players did enough damage or that the fight was dramatic enough. And to me, that's where it starts to become less of playing a game with your friends and more you taking them on a guided experience. You're not putting your thumb on the scale, you're pressing your whole hand into it and basically deciding this is when they're going to succeed and this is when they're going to fail. And then it gets super muddy when something like a character dies. Well, was that the dice in the game deciding, or was that you deciding because you didn't have any HP for your monster? That fight could have ended whenever you wanted. So I think you can absolutely take the fudging too far, and I also think that cheapens the experience for you. Part of the fun of being a dungeon master is letting go of the reins a little bit and not knowing exactly what's going to happen. And sometimes that means your bosses are going to get steamrolled. And sometimes it means fights you didn't think were going to be anything special ended up being really tense and crazy because that's what was going on with the dice and your players were getting lucky or unlucky and things happen. And as the dungeon master, reacting to that is part of the game. That's what makes it fun, right? Is that you don't know everything that's going to happen and that you have to think on your feet. And it can be really scary, especially when you're first starting out, but I would caution anybody who likes to fudge a lot to maybe pull back just a little bit and see how it goes. And I do agree about the second point of them never finding out. If you do fudge, don't tell your players, ever. Nothing ruins something quite like you just beat this dragon, it was a huge boss fight, really tense, and then the dungeon master tells you, oh yeah, I actually crit the rogue twice, but I told you they're regular hits so you didn't die. That's awful. That just deflates the whole thing and makes them feel like they didn't earn anything. So do not tell them if you do, but I would really encourage you to fudge just a little less and see how it goes. You might find it's more fun for everyone involved. This one's about the new 2024 version of D&D 5e. Weapon masteries at level 1 aren't a good inclusion. They can slow down combat by being an extra thing to remember, and they're all quite powerful. Plus, thematically, I don't like the idea of being a master of anything at level 1. Characters should start weak, then become strong. This is one that, when I first read it, kind of viscerally, I was like, that's not true. And then the more I thought about it, the more I was kind of like, I do sort of agree. When I first read the rules for the 2024 version of D&D 5e, I really loved the weapon masteries. It seems like such a fun way to give marshals just a little bit more of a tactical advantage. Whereas your spellcasters get to do all kinds of crazy stuff all the time, sometimes when you're playing a marshal, it feels like your whole turn goes, I run up, I hit, maybe I hit again, and then I'm done. And so weapon masteries were a way to at least give them something extra to do that they could use to influence the enemies and change up the battlefield a little bit. So conceptually, I really like that. But I do think this person's right in that a lot of them are really strong. And the fact that you're basically doing them every single turn is pretty crazy. There's one, I don't remember which one it is, where without a save, if you hit the enemy, they automatically get disadvantage on their next attack. If you're fighting a boss that relies on melee, that is really strong. And so I think a better system might have been kind of like what they're saying here of instead of starting out with just what the ability is and that's the strongest possible, maybe having some kind of leveling system where you start with 2 like adept weapons where you have a little bit of an extra bonus, and then as you level up you can either get another weapon that you're adept with, or you can move up to the experienced class and that ability bumps up, and then eventually you get to the master where you get these really strong abilities. I think that or something similar is maybe a better system. I understand that's more complicated, and I'm sure they did it this way just to keep things more simple for newer players, but I actually do agree. While weapon masteries I think are really cool concepts, I don't know if the way they implemented them is the best. But as I actually use the 2024 rules more and more, my opinion might change for better or for worse. We'll have to see, but for now, I think they're kind of spot on. Hot take, your guidance isn't worth the air that you waste telling us you cast it. It's mostly just an annoying way to say, and I'm here too. As a player, I say thanks and then usually proceed to roll a 2 or a 19, where a d4 will do nothing to help. As a GM, it usually factors in just a little to my thoughts. On the DCs, I'm just winging as we go. Unless the DC was announced, someone asks for the help, or a life is on the line, a d4 probably isn't worth the disruption. This is one where I agree that guidance is very annoying, and they do specify this is the 2014 version of guidance. I think in 2024 it's a leveled spell now and takes a bonus action. There's something about it that makes it a little more palatable. I'll put over here what that is. So this is the 2014 version, but I agree, it is pretty annoying, especially when you have players that want to use it again and again and again. I do disagree though that it doesn't matter, because the thing about guidance is it's a cantrip. So when you can use it, there's no reason not to use it. And yes, on any one individual roll, it's probably not going to have much of an impact, but it's kind of like a +1 sword. When you swing that sword and you add +1 to it, most attacks, that +1's not doing too much. But over the course of a campaign, when you're swinging it again and again and again and again and again, there are going to be a lot of times where that little small bonus does make a difference. Same with guidance. If you can use it again and again and again and again and again, I do think that ends up having a big effect on skill checks across your entire campaign. So I really wouldn't say that it's not doing much, because I think it's doing a lot. But I think the other part that makes it a little more annoying than it should be is that, myself included a lot of the times, I don't think DMs hold players to the standard of spellcasting that they're supposed to with guidance. Guidance is a verbal and a somatic spell. So if your bard is trying to convince a shopkeep to give him a discount, and the cleric is in the background muttering under their breath and doing all like this, they're probably going to be a little suspicious when the bard becomes really, really convincing. And so there are lots of times when, for whatever reason, you shouldn't really be able to use guidance. I can also be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure you're supposed to cast the spell before the roll happens. It is concentration, so you have a full minute, but I think the order of operations is supposed to be guidance is cast, they roll the skill check, and then they can choose whether or not to use it. And if they make another skill check later, they can then use it as long as it's within that 1 minute. But a lot of the time, they roll, they fail, and then the player is like, oh wait, I have guidance, could I have used that, could I have cast that? And then the DM, you don't want to be a jerk, so you're like, yeah, sure, you can add it on. And so I think if you really hate guidance, the 2014 version, and think it's super annoying, just enforce a little bit more those verbal and somatic components, and really thinking about, is this a situation where it is appropriate for you to be able to do that? And make sure your players understand that if they want to use guidance, they have to use it before they roll for the skill challenge. So when the rogue says, I'm going to pick this lock, that's when they say, hey, I'm going to give you guidance. Not after they fail by 1 and then the player goes, oh, wait a second, my D4. And I think that does work pretty well to solve some of the problems that guidance has. So hopefully the 2024 version has saved whatever issues you have with it. I'd look into it, because I remember reading it and thinking, oh yeah, that is a lot better. But I agree, it's super annoying, but I do think it really does matter a lot of the time.
Future me again. Past me is an idiot and completely wrong. It is still a cantrip in 2024 D&D, and it is still an action, so I don't know where I got that from. The only change is that now you have to specify what skill they can use it on, which doesn't really change what makes it super annoying. Because if you're using guidance or you're trying to use it, you generally know what skill they used. So it's still probably going to be spammed by players all the time. But I think the stuff that I said in terms of tips that might help you mitigate the really annoying parts about it are still true, no matter which version you're using. Hopefully it helps. Sorry they didn't fix guidance. Back to me.
Not all characters need a traumatic backstory. Sometimes the campaign is the traumatic backstory. So this one I mostly agree with a little caveat. I do think people put too much of an emphasis on their backstory, trying to create a whole story for their character before the game ever begins. It's good to leave gaps in your player's history or in what your character wants to do, so that when you get to the table and you're all discovering the story and the world together, you still have lots to build on. You can go through a journey with that character. It's really boring if the character you're playing has already figured out life before they ever roll a dice. Leaving space for them to grow in the game is really important. And so I do agree with this comment that you don't need a crazy long 10-page backstory. But what I will say is that I think the reason a lot of dungeon masters put such an emphasis on you giving them a backstory for your character is because they want things that they can take from your backstory to use in the campaign. They want to know how they can hook you into the story and the world. And so when you have a character who has goals that they want to achieve, who has a hometown that they love, people that they either want to find or they want to get revenge on, whatever that is, all of those story hooks are things that I as a DM look at and I say, okay, I have this plot going on about dragons. I'm going to take this rival from their backstory. Now they're one of the leaders of one of these factions that they're interested in, and they're working for these evil dragons or something like that. Or, same concept, the dragons are attacking this character's hometown, and now they're really invested in going and trying to take them down. And so I don't think you need a crazy long backstory, but I do think it's really, really helpful to your dungeon master to give them a couple of things that they can sink their teeth into. Goals, hooks, connections that you have to that world. That's way more important than just the length of it all. So I agree, you don't need a crazy long backstory, but help a dungeon master out, give them some hooks that they can use in the story. Hot take, the raw way of handling attacking downed players is better and underused. Any attack within 5 feet has advantage due to prone and automatically crits a downed PC due to the unconscious condition. I think that's only melee attacks technically, but I'd have to look at the rules. A crit causes 2 automatically failed death saving throws. This means if a player takes just 1 hit while downed and fails their death save on their next turn, they're toast. Many DMs have enemies routinely ignore downed PCs, leading to the time of the table where the player can't do anything and or yo-yo healing that drags out combat. I think it's better to make getting down a real, serious risk of death with high stakes. And if you don't want to kill your players, don't give them combats that will down them. This is one that I conceptually agree with, but in practice disagree with. You are absolutely 1000% right. If you attack down players, that is guaranteed to ratchet up the tension at your table. I've definitely done it a couple different times in different scenarios, and every single time a player gets hit and fails those 2 death saving throws, now everybody else is put on high alert to try and get in and save that player. I even had one time where a player went down, the entire round came around back to them, and when they were still down and nobody had saved them, an NPC in this scenario, they knew their side was going to lose, they had very little chance of winning, and so they were vindictive and they took them out while they were on the ground. Granted, I knew that my paladin had Revivify when I did that, but still, there are absolutely times where when you attack the down player, it can really create intensity at the table that is hard to replicate. The problem is that I think a lot of people understand this conceptually. If you talk to most people, not everyone, but most people, they'll tell you that yes, they love deaths in their games, they want every fight to matter, and they want their players to feel like they could go down at any moment. But they don't want to be the reason that happens. They want that to happen because the monsters killed them, or the dice killed them, or they did something really stupid that put them in harm's way. When you choose to attack a downed player, even if it makes perfect sense for the NPCs to do that, that feels a lot more like you, the dungeon master, choosing to kill that player or take down that player. And so that's where I think that line gets a little muddy and why people don't want to take on that responsibility. I'll give you another scenario. You have a player that's being attacked by 2 different characters that each have 2 attacks. One takes both their attacks and that takes down the player. And now the other person's going to go. You as the dungeon master are well within your right to hit them both times with those attacks and kill them right then and there. So what do you do? Do you follow through with it? Do you have them go take on somebody else who's more of a threat now that this person is down? Do you say, well, they saw the cleric healed them up before, so now they know that magic is in this fight, so now they take you out? Do they hit you once and then move on to somebody else? it's tough to know exactly what to do. And so that's why I think more people don't do it, is because they don't want that responsibility. They want to be able to hide behind their monsters in the DM screen and say, I didn't kill you, the game killed you. And honestly, I feel like that's what most people want, players and dungeon masters, because you don't want to feel like this is a curated experience that the DM is just sitting there pulling all the strings. You really want it to feel like you had a chance in that battle and things didn't go your way. So I agree with you. There are absolutely times where you should attack down players. One that I pretty much always do is if a player has antagonized somebody, or if I've already been like, they are going to make all 3 of their attacks against you. I've already committed for whatever's happening in the story, and then the first or second attack takes them down. I'm usually not going to stop those attacks unless there is some greater threat out there that they need to deal with or something else has happened. If I've committed those attacks, even if you go down, I'm going to keep going through those attacks because that's what that character chose to do before I ever knew you were going to go down. But be careful. I think saying that you should always do this or this way of doing it's better does sort of forget the emotional aspect of playing. So, up to each individual person, but I don't think it's as simple as you're making it out to be. This commenter had a couple different ones, so the one I'll focus on is skill challenges are way overrated. They are okay in certain groups, but they ask you to play a character sheet instead of playing a character. Unfortunately, we are going to have to fight now because I love skill challenges. So when I read this, my initial thought was absolutely not. But thinking about what you said, I do think there is a lot of merit here in that, for those that don't know, a skill challenge is basically where you set some kind of big obstacle for your party. Let's say they're sailing on a ship, a storm blows through, and they have to try to help stop the ship from sinking. And then each player says how they want to help in that situation. You have them roll a skill check, and if they hit the DC, that's 1 success. If they don't, that's 1 failure. And once they reach a certain amount of successes or failures, either the ship is saved, they succeed, or the ship sinks, they fail. And so it is a very fun way to help your players get creative about how to solve these problems that would be otherwise a little bit hard to abstract using the mechanics of D&D. I think skill challenges are awesome. You can use them in so many different ways for social challenges, travel through different wilderness terrain, all sorts of things. So I love them. But I do think there are absolutely times where you hit your party with a skill challenge and they just go, well, I'm good at athletics, so I guess I'll roll that to assist. And they roll their athletics, they succeed, and you move on. To combat that, you need to take it 1 step further. You have to make it less about what skill they're using and how they want to help. So if your players are struggling, and in that boat scenario, for example, your barbarian says, well, I want to use my athletics, I'm just not sure what to do. They could grab the ropes on the sails and pull them in to help keep them from blowing out or, tearing, whatever that happened. I'm not a sailor, okay? To keep them from tearing or whatever happens in a storm. They could be running around the deck grabbing people and keeping them from falling off as the ship rocks side to side. You get creative with how they want to do it, and that's where the real fun of skill challenges happens. So you are right in that if you're just playing it as, all right, everybody pick a skill and let's see what happens, that's pretty boring. But if you take it that next step further and get them to really describe how they want to help things, that's when it becomes a lot more fun and you can start building this scene in a way that is very cool and cinematic. It's still not going to be for everybody. It's not going to be for every party, but I love them. We don't have to fight. You'd probably win anyway, but I think you do bring up a good point. Hot take, experience points are easier for new DMs. I think if someone is learning to DM, then experience points are very helpful to learn how to pace level ups. People default to Milestone nowadays, saying it's easier, while forgetting that it isn't intuitive for a new DM to know when to level their players up. And as a player, experience is really fun for counting on when they can level up and makes them more eager to go adventuring, especially if you award experience for more obstacles than just combat encounters. Milestone just isn't as easy as people make it out to be. I think I mostly disagree with this one. As somebody who was once a new dungeon master, my players were really gung-ho about experience points, and so I would take the time to try and break down each encounter. I would be like, okay, they did this social thing, so I guess I'll add some there, and they did this, so I guess I'll just give them 50 here, and I would use it to sort of break it all down. And then, as we kept playing, and I was like, I really don't want to do this, eventually, I just kind of stopped, and I never went back, and it was fine. So I think it probably just depends on the person. This is sort of like when people tell you, all new DMs have to start with pre-written modules. obviously some folks are going to find pre-written modules easier to run than trying to homebrew everything and making it up on their own. But I know me personally, if I had to run something pre-written the first time I played, I probably would have bounced off the game, because that's not what I like about being a dungeon master. I like coming up with the world and the characters and the storylines that my players can then go into and mess up and change and do all kinds of fun stuff with. So I think this falls into the same category. Some people are going to find milestone leveling a lot easier and more intuitive. Some people are going to find experience point leveling a lot easier and more intuitive. Just look at both, see what you think, and if you're having trouble with one, try switching to the other and see what works best. So I don't know if I'd say experience points are always better for newer DMs or anything like that, but I think it's a balance, and I think you have to find what works for you. D&D is actually not a very good system, at least compared with alternatives. Other games have moved on and are more exciting or engaging, and they list Mothership and Crown and Skull as two that are better for different reasons. Progression in D&D makes the game kinda rubbish. You can't progress too far, or you become so powerful that things become too complicated and unfun. So many systems deal with that better. This is one that I think I pretty strongly disagree with, and not because I don't think there are other games out there that are really, really great. Take my opinion with a grain of salt. I have played the vast majority of my TTRPG time in D&D 5e. I branched out this year, played a couple of other titles, some that I really, really liked, but I think D&D, at least 5e, is very well designed for, as I understand it, what it is intended to do. It is intended to be a combat simulator, mostly, and I think it does a pretty good job of giving your players that power fantasy of fighting big old monsters. And then two, and maybe more importantly, it is a system that they were trying to design for mass appeal, to make D&D an easier game for people to pick up and play. And when you look at it that way, I think D&D 5e is actually very well designed. If you don't know anything about TTRPGs, you can grab a book, and as long as your players understand more or less how to run their characters, and the Dungeon Master has the basics of combat down, and a list of skills in front of them, you can pretty much play D&D. And as you go on, of course, you will learn all the other rules. I'm not saying D&D is a rules-light system, but I think it pares down really well. And so that the core of the game, what you really need, can actually be summed up pretty quickly. And you can get going and get playing pretty fast. D&D is always going to be, well, in my opinion, I think D&D is always going to be the most popular TTRPG out there, just because of name brand recognition alone. It's just in the popular lexicon in a way that games like Pathfinder aren't. But when people watch Stranger Things, or they see Critical Role, and then they pick up the system and go to play, D&D 5e is designed in a way that makes it very easy for new players to get involved and get playing pretty quickly. That's not to say there aren't games out there that are better at that. There aren't games out there that are much simpler than D&D, but D&D being the big flagship TTRPG of the world, I think 5e is actually very well designed for the two main things that it wants to do. Now, the other part of this is that there are absolutely systems that do things a lot better than D&D, or do different genres a lot better than D&D. If you want to play a horror one-shot, go play 10 Candles. I got to play on Double Crit Fails channel. It's really awesome. You can check it out there if you want. I'll link it down below. And I would much, much, much rather play that if I was just doing a pure horror one-shot than try and take D&D 5e, which is meant for epic high fantasy adventure, and fit it into that mold. But the problem, and why I think so many people don't do that, is because usually you're already in a campaign. You're playing D&D and you just want a pirate arc or a horror arc, whatever it is. And so it's a really hard sell to go, hey players, let's change the game we're playing for this one little arc instead of just taking 5e and trying to make it work for whatever you're doing. So I don't think you're wrong. There are other games out there that do things better than D&D. And as I keep going in my own TTRPG journey, I cannot wait to play so many more. But I don't think it's fair to say D&D 5e is not a very good system, because I think it's actually really good at the two main things it wants to do. And if you just want to play high fantasy epic adventure where you are mostly slaying monsters and you're able to tell fun epic stories with your friends, I think 5e is pretty good at that, and it's pretty good at getting you going quickly compared to some of the other stuff that's out there. But that's just my opinion. Again, I haven't played that many other games, so this is one where I'd really love to hear your thoughts in the comments, especially games that you think onboard people a lot better than D&D. that's all the hot takes I'm going to tackle in this one. Thank you so much again to everybody who wrote in. I wasn't sure if anyone would be interested in this at all, and I could not have made the video without your participation. So thank you so much, and if you want to see more, let me know. Leave a comment, leave a like. I would love to do more kind of casual videos like this, so please tell me if it's something that you would want to watch. But thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. If you want to see more, make sure you subscribe to the Bard's College. I make videos about D&D, DMing, and everything in between, so stick around. But for now, good luck, and remember, crit your players.